by expanding NATO around the Black Sea and surrounding Russia, a kind of Crimean War version 2, 160 years after the first Crimean War. So the U.S. is making a mess in the world. Donald Trump is, of course, utterly corrupt and utterly incompetent. But, George, the sad fact is our last 6 presidents have been ranging from utter mediocrities to absolutely terrible. Every one of them has gotten us into unnecessary wars. The U.S. deep state, meaning the security apparatus, the CIA, the military-industrial complex, now Silicon Valley, which is up to its neck in Pentagon contracts and AI battlefield planning and so forth. All of this is beyond the normal politics. The system runs almost no matter who's president. It happens that Trump is the most incompetent, the most vile of them. But I have to tell you, I've been saying that of each president, that it couldn't get worse, and then it keeps getting worse.
Yes, and of course that could continue. You've definitely had back-to-back amongst the worst and the trigger. But what I suppose I'm saying, I'm so old, I remember the Vietnam War as if it was yesterday. And although it finished just
I do too.
weeks before I was born, I remember the Korean War. And so what I'm thinking is that the U.S. has gotten into all these wars, but it hasn't won any of them. And it hasn't prevailed in any of them. North Korea is the Economist's economic pick of the year. Its economy outperformed every other economy, according to the economists. Vietnam is, trust me on this, an absolute delight of a country, despite the efforts that were made to destroy it. And right up to Iran. Iran is now more powerful, more united than I think it has ever been. And so all these wars, all these crimes that the U.S. keeps committing, they actually backfire. They leave America weaker, more hated and isolated than before.
There are 2 basic problems that have led to this dire state of the U.S. The first actually dates back almost 80 years now to the end of World War II. In 1947, the National Security Act established the CIA as a kind of private and unaccountable army of the President of the United States, a military force that could overthrow governments, that could do nefarious deeds, and that basically got out of control even of the presidents themselves. And because the CIA operates with deniability, I won't say it operates secretly because we can see its fingerprints everywhere, but it operates with deniability. There is basically no accountability. And that means that the security state has come to determine American policy, even when the American people are against these wars. They are for Palestinian rights. They are not interested in pursuing a war against Russia. They are steadfastly against the war in Iran. But it doesn't matter. This is not a representative democracy where public opinion is the driver. The second thing that has gone horribly wrong with American politics is the financial corruption. Basically, starting in the 1970s, every limit on campaign spending, on the ability of rich people and lobbies and corporations to fund and buy the government have been eliminated. The Supreme Court played a terrible, deliberate role in that. saying, what could go wrong? Corporate money is just free speech, they declared in case after case. Something tragic and absurd, foolish on its face, disastrous in its consequence. So the United States government has become a corrupt morass where a great proportion of the Congress is funded by the military, industrial, digital complex, as I call it, because Silicon Valley is a core part of this now. Companies like SpaceX or Google or Palantir are riding on huge Pentagon budgets. They are warmongers because they're testing their weapons, they're developing their battlefield AI, they're doing all sorts of horrible things, but they are calling the shots. So between the security state, which already President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address 65 years ago in 1961, he told us we are falling under the control of the military-industrial complex and the corruption of American politics. Our system has become utterly degraded. What happened, George, in addition to all of this, was a really dangerous, nutty mindset. Despite the Vietnam War, despite all these losses and disasters that the CIA created, all of the instability in the civil wars. When the Soviet Union ended in December 1991, the American officials, especially these security state officials, got into their head that the United States now runs the show. It has military bases in 80 countries, roughly 750 overseas bases. CIA operates all over the world. Soviet Union's gone, Russia's weak. They decided we run the show. They called it the unipolar moment. They called the U.S. The global hegemon. They said the U.S. has indisputable primacy. And it was all a delusion, even back 35 years ago, but with the rise of China, with the recovery of Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the financial crises of that period, the United States is hardly the sole superpower, but it acts like it is, believes that it is, reads its own headlines. And so it's really all three factors that are at play: a security state that is unaccountable, a corrupt political system heavily funded by the security state, and a belief in one's own press reviews, which is nonstop narrative and propaganda spun by the mainstream media that the United States somehow runs the show. What's so incredibly disappointing in all of this is that seemingly sane people, leaders in Europe, don't stand up and say, my God, this is a shit show. Stop this. They say, oh, no, we must deal with the United States. Donald Trump is daddy, in the words of the Secretary General of NATO, no less. These politicians are so desperate to please Donald Trump, an old, very confused, never bright individual that sits on the top of this heap, doing absolutely crazy and illegal and dangerous things, like a completely, totally crazy and unnecessary war of aggression against Iran that these fools thought was going to last one day, because Donald Trump told us the next day after launching the war, I'll pick the next leader, after they had assassinated the supreme leader of Iran. Here we are months later. They've hardly picked the new leader. They've just set the world economy into a disastrous tailspin. Nothing has worked the way that Trump has said it would. This is not a surprise. The man is not exactly clever. And here we are in a deepening disaster. You mentioned that his approval rating is under 40%. It's probably closer to 30% at this point, something like 32% approve, something like 60 plus 62, 63% disapprove, and a few percentage points have no particular opinion. But the fact of the matter is, the American people are much better than our government. Most of us are just shaking our head, wondering how a country that had ostensibly a representative democracy has let that representative government slip out of its fingers, and now we just pay the bills or back up the debt of a military state that is in a tantrum and in a rampage. Maybe that's the last point I would mention, which is, the U.S. Thought itself the sole superpower, the country that would run the world. It has proven to be otherwise. And the American reaction, or let's say the Washington reaction or the deep state reaction, is not a sober reconsideration, but rather a growing temper tantrum. We're just having a kind of breakdown. Let's bomb this one. Let's overthrow this one. Let's kidnap the president of this one. Let's show our macho credentials. It's a kind of tantrum that leads nowhere other than to an accelerated decline. But that's the sad reality. So yes, it's worthy of mockery, but the sad part is it's no joke. It's just a growing disaster for a lot of people, for the Palestinians, for the Ukrainians, for the Iranians.
A lot of people are paying a very high price for this degeneration. I'm actually the great-grandson of the only woman in the 19th century who emigrated from New York to Dundee in Scotland, else I wouldn't be sitting here. So I have American blood in my veins, and it pains me to see the state you're in. It is ironic, isn't it, that the Republicans now seem to be falling back on the 1950s McCarthyite idea that America is somehow threatened by communism, and socialism is on the lips of all of Trump's entourage, but only as a swear word. And yet these very industries that you are talking about, the Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, these are all public expenditure junkies. These are all beneficiaries of state benefaction. They ought to be grateful to the American taxpayer, who's paid a pretty penny for their private profits.
Well, look, Elon Musk spent several $100 million to get Trump elected, and has made several tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in return for his quote unquote political investment. This is a game that is absolutely vulgar and disastrous. I don't think these words mean much anymore, George, not in substance, but not even in resonance. Maybe to, a few of Trump's elderly supporters, they may remember who McCarthy is. They may feel that sudden excitement when the word communism is spoken. But for young people in America, this is all meaningless. And so when Trump started about the communist scare a few weeks ago, as part of his fall campaign, all you could say is not, how nasty and cynical, but how incredibly irrelevant and tone deaf this is. No one cares. This doesn't resonate. We are not actually in 1953. We're in 2026. And these words just don't have that emotional frisson that maybe for Donald Trump in his 80th year, they somehow still do. Remember, his guru, a very, very nasty man named Roy Cohen, was the lawyer for the McCarthy hearings. Maybe Trump feels some special attraction to all of that pathology that was Joseph McCarthy. But for young people today, my God, they're wondering, why is this country falling apart? Support of young people for Donald Trump is vanishingly small. His base, which is disappearing in any event, is some older people. And it used to be working class, but they've lost heart also. All Donald Trump has done is cut taxes for the rich, raised inflation by putting on tariffs that he had no power to do. The joke is he collected maybe $150 billion from consumers in these tariffs. Then the Supreme Court declared the tariffs to be unconstitutional, illegal. But the money's going back to the companies, not to the consumers. So the whole thing is being viewed by the American people as, what the hell is all of this about? And then this war in Iran, which, so totally vulgarly violated every statement that Trump made in the 2024 campaign about getting America out of these endless wars and all the heavy costs. And we can all see that Bibi Netanyahu showed up one day with this idiot head of Mossad, Barnea, and sweet-talked Trump into about the stupidest thing imaginable. And then Trump bragged, hey, I'm the one that did it. The other 6 presidents before me were afraid to do it. Yeah, they had even, a slight sliver of common sense that this one lacks. So the base is gone. There is no base right now. But unfortunately, as I said, public opinion does not drive policy. Maybe we'll have an election in which the votes are actually counted, in which the gerrymandering doesn't destroy representation. If we do in November, Trump will lose at least the lower house, the House of Representatives. It'll mean the end of his presidency, other than the continuing attempt to rule by basically illegal and unconstitutional executive decrees. We're in a mess. The mess is going to last for a while longer.
Well, as a famous Russian said, Professor, what is to be done? Now, just swapping the man in the red tie for the man in the blue tie obviously isn't working. 2 cheeks of the same ass, and the ass is hanging down below the knees now. It is no longer an ass that can be presented to the people, to the world. So something new, somebody new. Now, my eye was caught by Tucker Carlson's 10-point program and the people that he has assembled, Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Kent, and so on. There's quite a few that I know that are regulars on this show that should be added to that. And I'm sure that Tucker will take a Catholic view to who's involved in this third force. But does that particular third force have any legs as you see it?
Well, it represents the American public opinion. So it's very important. These are all politicians, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. Tucker's not a politician, just a very smart, decent observer and commentator. But these are all people who have told the truth, the basic truth that the United States has become a war machine. That's its main purpose of governance. Cut taxes for the rich, cater to Silicon Valley so that we can make autonomous weapons and AI battlefield systems and continue our perpetual wars. And this group is saying no. And these are the politicians among them were saying no within Trump's party. And that wasn't simple to do. They lost their job in essence because Trump, was able to push them aside. But they're saying, no, we're not going to be pushed aside. We are the voice, actually, of the American people. So I think that it's a significant development. Whether it turns out to be the specific political breakthrough, I don't know. But I think it reflects the fact that the American people are not going quietly into this. They're saying we want our government back. We want peace. We're sick of perpetual wars. We'd actually like to be able to have a decent job and afford our housing and our healthcare costs. No doubt in American politics, the number one issue is so-called affordability. But what that really translates into is that the number one issue for actual